Hi everyone, nice to meet everybody, and thank you for having me. My name is Omar Alrabi, and I'm 26 years old. And maybe introducing myself this time would circulate around what's happening in Gaza. I've been living in Gaza ever since 1999. I've grew up there and lived there my whole life. Like my whole life revolved around Gaza. So it's always my home and it always will be, despite the fact that I've now managed to evacuate with my family after approximately 30 days, to be precise, 26 days of the aggression on Gaza. And yeah, I'm here to tell my story and hopefully it reaches some people and impacts some people. My life before the 7th of October, it was basically revolved around simplicity. It was at those times where you wake up, you're energized, and I go to work, and I worked at a program called Gaza Sky Geeks, and I was able to help many people with their tech education in general, and at the same time, I'd go and see my friends in the afternoon, so it's a 9 to 5 job, and then hang out, take walks everywhere, pretty much in Gaza, because what makes Gaza special is the fact that it's a pretty small and confined space, so taking a walk wherever, whenever, like a 1 hour walk would suffice in seeing most of Gaza, which is very beautiful. Basically, it was a very normal, simple life, full of joy, full of very beautiful, simple things. I keep repeating the word simple because simplicity was key. But yet at the same time, we never complained. We always loved it. And that was so precious about Gaza, full of love, full of happiness, and full of simplicity. And that's all about before 7th of October. It was a 180 degrees shift. It was a total different life. It was a life that I think not a single person in Gaza was ever prepared to endure and was ever built to endure. Just continuous bombardment at such a heavy load and on another level, so aggressive that you don't know where the bombing is happening and it's happening everywhere. So ever since day one, there's no safe place in the Gaza Strip. I live in the western part of Gaza City. So basically between the south and the middle of Gaza Strip, there's Gaza City. I live in the western part of it, close to the sea. I was with my mother that day. My father managed to go to Amman, to travel to Amman 2 days before the aggression happened or started. So on the 5th of October, he traveled. And I have a sister. We're a family of four, and my sister is married. She was at her home with her husband, and then everything started. And the first bombardment that happened that we actually heard, it was literally 100 to 200 meters away from our own home. We live in an 11-story residential building, and we're on the 7th floor. And it was very close. And I remember so much, basically, smoke erupting and all of it going in through the windows, because usually, as per every Gazan, you'd hear that from every Gazan, everyone has that. Whenever anything like that starts or escalates, we always open or crack open the windows, because at the fear of so much pressure from the bombardment, the heavy bombardment, and the glasses shattering and injuring people in the home. So it was very close, and at the same time, it was the first experience for me and my mother to be alone at an aggression. And because, Gaza, unfortunately, and with such a sad heart, I say this, Gaza is a history of aggressions, which is nowhere near close to acceptable to anyone, that an entire population of 2.3, 2.4 million living in continuous aggressions. So my mom and I, after the first bombing close to our home, we started thinking maybe we should go to my sister's house and her husband, maybe just to keep each other company. 4 people, I guess, are just better than 2 at such a situation. So the idea that we did not even prepare for what's to come, starting this day forward to today, what we packed were just 2 backpacks, and just like I had 2 shirts, pants, and just 1 shoe. That's it. That's what I packed. And my phone as well. That's it. from day one, I moved to my sister's house. It was also in the west, very close to us, a kilometer away. We stayed together. We kept each other company, me, my mother, my sister, and her husband. And we stayed there for day one, day two, day three. And then we stayed all the days up until the day that they started announcing that the city of Gaza and the north of Gaza are dangerous zones and are war zones, and there needs to be no civilians in there, and you need to evacuate to after the Gaza Valley, which is basically middle area and the south. So on that morning, it was around dawn where we woke up to many messages and calls of people saying, watch out, they're saying you should evacuate, you're saying you should evacuate, because we're just waking up and trying to realize, is this true? Because many times, Israeli army and soldiers, they play a mental battle as well with the civilians of Gaza. They tell you that you're in danger and so on. That, like, I know personally close friends who received calls telling them that we'll kill you and so on, and allegedly those are from Israeli settlers, just getting the phones of people in Gaza and just calling to just put them at absolute horror. So it was also a challenge to just realize, is this an actual call, or is this true, is this not, and so on. Yet you can't, and sometimes you just can't possibly say, oh, this couldn't be true. You have to take it in and fully assess the situation, because we're talking about your life being in danger. And no matter what any Gazan civilian did. So, for example, if a Gazan civilian saw the evacuation notice and went to the middle area or the south, they did right, because it's for their own life. It's for the sake of staying alive. But if any Gazan stayed in the north and stayed in the Gaza city, where they were told to evacuate, they're also right, because it's their own homes, and sometimes they don't have anywhere to go to. We're 103 days. This day, people sleep in the streets. People sleep in tents that if it rains on, their tent is literally broken down and flooded with rain. So anywhere, north, south, middle area, Gaza City, anywhere, it's not safe, uninhabitable, not secured for civilians, and they will be targeted even if they evacuated. Many were targeted on their way. So once we saw that, we decided that, no, this seems legit, because the news was circulating everywhere that you should just evacuate. So we went to the middle area at a close friend's house, and we stayed there for 4 days approximately. And after that, my uncle contacted us, and he's like, we're in Yunis, which is the closest city to Rafah and the biggest city in the Gaza Strip. So come join us and let's be together. And trust me, in Gaza, this is like this whole mentality of strength in numbers. You feel like you're kept company, you feel safer by just being in a place where there's a number of people. Although, of course, Israeli occupation and the army do not give a damn about this at all. They do not care at all. You're in numbers, you're alone. They'll target anyone at any time, surrounded by anyone. There is no regard for anyone. Yes, so once they announced, we went from Gaza City to al-Maghazi refugee camp. You've probably seen it on the news and how demolished it is. Al-Maghazi is in the middle area, and it's one of the areas that is marked as safe area by the Israeli army. We stayed there for 4 days. And on day 4, and that was all around the last days of October. We're talking about October 20th. So in October 20th, 21st, we went to, after al-Maghazi, we went to Yunis, which is in the south, closest city, biggest city in the Gaza Strip, and closest city to Rafah. We stayed there with my uncle, his wife, his children. He has 2 little kids. They're around 4 or 5 years old. And we stayed in a house of the relatives of my uncle's wife, and we were around between 30 to 40 people, of men, women, and children, mostly even children. We stayed in that house, and we stayed from around the 21st, 22nd up to November 1st, when we were contacted after contacting the Jordanian Ministry of Exterior to evacuate us, as we hold the Jordanian passport and citizenship, and they managed to evacuate us on November 1st. So staying in the south, we stayed about around 10 days to 12 days, and basically that's where it really hit us, the scarcity of food, or what is right now called famine, which I don't really think famine is the best word to describe it, because it's usually happened with natural causes or causes of war, as it would affect the idea of food being there, as for example, the land is not healthy enough basically for you to plant, or so on. But when it's deliberate starvation of a big civilian population of millions and prohibiting them from food, it's forced starvation. And that's where it should be classified, in my own personal opinion. I believe one of the most effective things that shift the world's attention towards only focusing on the attacks, the terror attacks, and we're responsible and Israel is doing this for its own safety and so on, is the fact that mainstream media and the Western media platforms always broadcast that, they bring you some big, very important official in the IDF, and they start speaking about, we inform people of evacuation, we inform them of safe zones, we inform them that the zone that they're living in or residing in currently is a dangerous zone and they have to evacuate today or in the next few days, and it's dangerous zones and they have to evacuate, and so on. But in reality, no safe zone, as I was in contact with all of my friends. No one, from day one, there was no whole idea of safe zones or anything. The whole idea of safe zones started after 2 weeks after everything, after the 7th of October, approximately, they started talking about safe zones as an official announcement. So you'd go on and search through Twitter, search through Facebook, and so on about IDF officials and so on, and then they tell you, oh, population of Gaza or the civilians of Gaza, this is not a safe zone, evacuate from it, there will be under intense bombardment or intense military action and so on. But from day one, meters away, 100 meters to 200 meters away from my own home, there was a targeting, there was a bombing to basically like a small house. No warning, no prior warning. Some people may argue that, 200 meters away, and maybe they know their stuff, they're experienced, so they didn't call you because they know you wouldn't be harmed and you're here right now. But what I don't believe about that is how were my two best friends from 2019, Khalid and Salah, the twins, Khalid and Salah Jadallah, they were targeted at their own home along with their family, and no phone calls, no telling them that this is not a safe zone, no telling them that they need to evacuate, and they were killed. They were deliberately targeted and killed. They were not casualties. They were not people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So tell that to my best friends. Tell this argument about safe zones to my best friends. Fast forward to now, you were talking about Rafah in the south of the Gaza Strip. 1.3 million displaced civilians are living there in a city that would usually house around 100 to 200,000 civilians at capacity. So this is now the so-called safe zone, as reported by the IDF, is being continuously bombed. There has been a telecommunications blackout for 6 days, and during the 6 days, I can't hear anything about my relatives and friends and colleagues. I don't know anything about them. So I think one of the most highlighted ones would be in my time with me and my relatives and family and Khan Yunis at the south of Gaza Strip. If we managed to get sleep, if it was a calm night, we'd still wake up by dawn and we'd divide ourselves. The men and the children who were like, let's say, less than 18 years old, but very close to 18, would divide ourselves. Some of them would go, we were living across 2 bakeries. So we divide some of them to stand in line at dawn. We're talking around 4 or 5 a.m. to go there and stand in line to be able to get basically bread, which is a plastic bag full of bread, which is of course not enough, but that's why multiple people stand, because we're talking about 30 people in a home. So a plastic bag of bread would not be enough. And we'll divide ourselves to more people going to purchase groceries like vegetables, and people going to purchase any types of snacks they can find, any type of canned food, any type of groceries, and other people to go find any means of water, to try and ask people if they'd have either the salted water, which would be used for washing, or clean water, which would be used for drinking. And that would go on from dawn to 2, 3, 4 p.m., where we'd be able to gather back at home. And of course, that's all under heavy bombardment everywhere in Khan Yunis, that so-called safe zone. And after we'd gather, we'd start preparing our lunch. This whole idea of people having 3 meals a day, in Gaza, that's not a reality. In Gaza, you can have a snack a day, and if you're lucky, and maybe have a meal a day. And that's what we're doing basically most of the times. It would be a very good day if we're able to have 2 meals a day. It would be great, which is that would be lunch and dinner. And in the morning, we try and basically salvage just to drink tea or have some biscuits with it. And we just gather around at night, start chatting and hoping for a calm night, which usually wouldn't be. And we'd face blackouts of internet and communication, so we can't communicate with anyone outside, or people knowing anything about us, or us knowing about anything about our loved ones. And no electricity in what way whatsoever. So we'd go out, try our best to find places to charge our phones. We'd have the barber shop right next to us who had some electricity, so we were able to charge our phones and charge a small battery, which would be enough to power the internet and give us a big light, so we'd be able to stay up at night and not just be in the dark. At the same time, when I'm talking about starvation, forced starvation is the first days of war, you could still go to the markets, find some stuff, find some groceries, find some food, find some chicken, find some snacks. But then what happens is, after days and days, we're not talking about a day or a week of aggression or genocide, we're talking about 100 days. So after going into day 10, many markets were like, we don't have anything to offer anymore. It wasn't just about things being expensive. That happened in the first couple of days. So if you're buying something like a kilogram of something for $1, it starts to be a kilogram of something for $2 or $3 or $4. And it was acceptable because it's a state of aggression. So you're just happy that you found something to prepare and eat. But then so many markets and grocery stores and bakeries were like, we're out. We don't have anything. And that's where it gets to a true level of starvation, because every day you wake up and you start chasing your meal or a couple of meals to survive. So let alone being in Khan Yunis, which is the most challenging, because we're about around 30 people. So we need to secure good enough food for 30 people to be able to eat, which was a challenge each and every day. And water was a whole nother story. You can't actually find healthy water. People are living on water that is less than 70 or 60% clean or filtered. So this is contaminated water, and this basically is hurtful to the human body. And living on it for 103 days, you can only imagine what happens to the people, what happens to the absolute entire nervous system and health system of the people and digestive system. And with the scarcity of water, it would get to a point where when you go to the bathroom, we're talking about a big number, so the bathroom is not available at any time that you need it, let alone to save water, you wouldn't be showering whenever you feel like it, because it's not only you or a couple of people in the house. We're talking about 30 people, and we're talking about limited resources of water. So basically, you'd have to time your shower to be once every 2 weeks or something, or once every time they would be able to refill the water tanks. You'd have to, and your shower wouldn't be the comfortable shower of you showering and relaxing and so on. No, just give yourself a timer of 2, 3, 4 minutes max to just be able to just basically put some water all over your body and just feel a bit refreshed, and then that's it. That would be called a good enough shower. And when it comes to bathroom, the idea of even flushing the bathroom is also such inhumane conditions that when you're living with that many people, you can't just flush the bathroom at any time, because all of that takes up much of the water that is in the tanks, and you know that it's not guaranteed for you to be able to find sources of water that easily. So sometimes people would go in, and then basically you'd have to time your showers, you'd have to time going to the toilet. It was very inhumane. It's no condition that any human being should endure. It's no condition that the world itself would call for. And it's unjust that the world let this all happen for that long of a time, 103 days. Battle that I endured as any Gazan, and again, this is a perspective of someone who left 26 days, so imagine what people of 103 days have to tell you. So when it comes to the mental battle or the mental challenges that I had, what ideas were in our head, is you try to make it easier on yourself and to comfort yourself with the idea that it's okay. We're safe, we're civilians and whatever, because you try to find some sense of morality in the people you're going up against, but there's none. There's 0%. So with each and every day, and this is one of the first times I actually endured so many losses between people that I know that were killed. So with each and every piece of news, tragic news that I get regarding friends and close people and acquaintances, I fear for myself and family even more, because it feels like absolutely no one is safe, but it went from a feeling to an absolute fact. No one is safe anywhere. So basically, you're sitting, if it's full of like what's called drones and F-16s and all that sounds of bombardment, you're constantly in fear for your life. But at the same time, if it's calm, if there's little to no absolute noise of drones and F-16s and bombardment, you're very, very worried at the same time, because it could come back at any time and generate the sense of fear, insecurity, and danger in you at any time. So with each and every passing day, absolutely, you're very, very sure that you're not safe, and we're just people waiting for our turn to be the next number. It started with 1 to 100 civilians killed. We're talking about 30,000 or 32,000+ killed now. The hardest moment was the moment that I received the news of the loss, the tragic killing, deliberate forced killing of my two best friends, Khalid and Salah Jadallah, on October the 11th, at the comfort of their own home, and with their father, with their sister as well. And that to me was a shock. I was going through, I didn't have internet connection there for a while. Like, I lost internet for about 3 days. So after getting internet connection, it was just flooding with messages and updates. So I'm looking, and a friend of mine is telling me, Omar, Khalid and Salah, they're killed. I froze in front of that message for a while, and I just went and looked everywhere, and people were actually uploading their pictures, and it was the hardest moment by far for me during this genocide. And what this news left me in shock, because that's like the first moment that I ever endured the loss of very close people to my heart, people that I lived with, and from 2019 up to this year. And we were actually planning to hang out on basically the Sunday or the Monday of which would be October 8th or 9th, and then everything happened on October 7th, and that I couldn't see them. And it left me just saying that, yeah, I think, who's next, or am I next? And yeah, no one is safe. Even my best friends, that's what happened to them. No one is safe. No one is safe from this. And how on earth is the world just silent or able to, just upload, ceasefire? It's not stopping. Can anyone see that nothing is stopping, that you need to do more, that we're dying one by one? When is the moment that you're going to be like, no, this is enough. We need to do something different. We need to raise our voice. We need to be louder than we are. We need to be more effective. It left me sadness, anger, rage, fear. And first thing I did after being in shock is, of course, weep. Not just cry, but weep, because it was not a moment of like, there's no taking back. There's no bringing them back. And losing them to an unjust, unfair world that could have absolutely stopped this. There was a chance that if the world did what's right, what's morally right, they would have stopped this before I lost my friends. It left me in anger, it left me in rage, and it left me in disbelief that I lost them. And while I was crying, basically all I did was I'd hold my phone and I just go through videos and photos of us and what we did and our memories, because this is something that Gazans do specifically and it's one form of resistance to us. None of those who were killed, none of those 30,000+ who were killed are numbers. They're people with their dreams, their realities. They meant the world to many people. They meant so much for many people. They had dreams, they had hopes, they had a life. They did good by many people. They made people laugh, they made people cry. They were everything to everyone. So we honor them. We hang their photos, we share stories about them, we share our memories with them. And we do this day in and day out. And this is not, I'd never forget them. The moment that for example, if a ceasefire happens today, doesn't mean I'm going to forget them. It doesn't mean I'm going to forget them tomorrow or the day after or a year or 10 years later. What we do is we make those people, loved ones that we lost, were killed, survive in our memories and our hearts and forever, and we tell their stories and we tell their hopes and dreams to anyone. So at the start of the war, the deepest fear was basically, dying, because you're someone with hopes and dreams, and you want to live more and you want to do more. And as the situation gets more and more hazardous and tough, your biggest fear is losing people. You do not want to go through the pain of loss, losing people. That was even to you, like to me personally, it was more, I'd fear that more than losing my own self. And then it gets to a point where it's so dangerous and the bombardment is so close, and you hear about very close people getting killed and people that you know and you lived your life with. So, and you'd hear the news about people who were under the rubble and they were able to rescue one person out of an entire family. And to me, that unlocked a new fear. It's the fact that what if we're targeted, bombarded, and then I'm the only survivor? So then you'd start wishing that if we're going to die, let's all die together. So stick close to each other. And day by day, you'd actually start losing, to me, my own personal experience, I'd lose the fear of dying. Because of the harsh conditions of living, you'd wonder how worse could it get. Dying, you'd start to slowly become okay with that and just waiting for your turn, because you've been pleading for help, so many stories of struggle have come out to the outside world through so many platforms of social media, and no one is moving or doing anything about it. So it feels like that's it, that's our fate, and people are just so accepted of that, and death does not become a fear anymore. It's just you don't want to. There's a saying where many people repeated during the war is people who are dead, they're the lucky ones. They're the ones who got to live. Well, we're the ones alive. We're the ones who are dead. So once all of this started, October 7th and so on, the first couple of days, the 3 and 4 days, you wouldn't have that idea, wouldn't cross your mind. Feel like, because deep inside you'd have the hope that this would be over soon and we get back to our homes and everything is okay. But then they make you evacuate to the middle area. Sorry. And maybe you think maybe this is really way more dangerous and impactful to our lives than we think. So you start thinking, what's next, Even in the middle area, we're thinking, we'll get back to our homes maybe. But then we started looking through social media and the news, and people were talking about the fact that if you have another nationality, you can contact the Ministry of Exterior or the embassy and so on, and request for you and your family to be evacuated. And basically after that, it felt like maybe this should be it. So might as well shoot my shot and contact them. And we contacted the ministry and just waited for them. And they're like, we'll get back to you once anything happens. And it took some time, we're talking about the start of November where we evacuated. It was November 1st, the first time they actually released a spreadsheet that contained countries and names of people who are allowed to evacuate. So during the first month, it just felt like, no, I'm just doing something. It might not even work, Why not? Let's just try. And it took some time. And then by the end of October, it just felt very dangerous that sometimes you think back, like, I hope they reply back to us. They called us during the last days of October. They're like, you should go tomorrow to the border because they're going to basically, the border will be open and you'll be able to evacuate. We'd wake up, look at the news, people saying the border is still not open. The border was supposed to open, but it's still not open. So we decided not to go. We called them back and they're like, it didn't open, so wait for us. And then they call us on like November 1st. And then they're like, the border is open today. You're clear to evacuate, head to the border. We were in Yunis at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we received the news, and we actually just went with our bags. And literally I had two t-shirts. We're in winter, but I had 2 t-shirts. That are summer t-shirts, and I had 1 pair of pants. I had 1 shoes, but there was no going back to our homes. It was already a no way back, and that's when we were able to evacuate. Yeah. So at the beginning, when I contacted them to evacuate myself and my family, I think about the idea of, oh my God, I hope it works. We'd be safe. We'd be okay. But then fast forward to the day where we went to the border and we were clear to evacuate. We went inside the lobby, the waiting hall, and we were waiting. And it hit me on my mind, like, what if they stamp my passport and I just go and I'm leaving everyone behind? And that's wrong. I don't feel okay with this. I don't feel like I made it out, because I feel like I physically am safe, but mentally, on a spiritual level, I'm still in Gaza. I'm literally still in Gaza. Everything in Gaza concerns and means the world to me. So once they stamped my passport, it really felt sad. In no way did it feel okay or a sense of happiness or relief, because at that point, it felt like physical safety is not even close to important as the safety of everyone in Gaza and the loved ones in Gaza. So I went from someone who had the comfort of living in their own home to someone who's away from their home for over 100 days. I went from someone who can see their friends on a daily basis by just a message or a phone call to someone who can't see their friends. And now not just can't see them, it's been 6 days since I last heard from my friends in Gaza. I went from someone who can go to the sea in a literal less than 10-minute walk, to someone who only sees videos and pictures of the sea and says, yeah, I miss it. And I went from someone who had work and had aspirations and dreams of a future, someone who was attempting to build a future, to someone who has no clue what they're doing anymore, what to do with their life, to someone who had the life sucked out of them. I used to have many hopes and dreams, and now I just want this to end, and I just want to reunite with the people, the loved ones, and just be able to know that they're safe and they're okay. And I'm absolutely out of energy, and I'm facing the so-called survivor's guilt. It weighs heavy on me, the fact that me, as someone who managed to evacuate Gaza after 26 days, but I left so many loved ones in Gaza, enduring what's happening on a daily basis. That feels wrong. That feels bad. It does not feel right. This is not something like, I'm happy that I walked out of there alive and my family's alive, I don't care anymore. No, this is not the case. I think this is, to me, I'd rather be there with them, enduring the danger and possibility of being killed and the scarcity of food and water, same as them, being in the cold, same as them, rather than just being here in any place of the world other than Gaza, where people can live normally and just go on about their days, while literal people, the vast majority of them are women and children, which I'd also like to comment on that. The vast majority of them are women and children, and that shows you how they're deliberately targeting civilians. But let's never forget our Palestinian men, because that's not the mainstream. Let's leave the mainstream media story that if other than women and children and elderly, the men are whatever you want to call them, terrorists or part of the armed militias. That's not. Palestinian men are also civilians. My many friends who are men and males, they were civilians. So this argument stands absolutely untrue. Ever since I'm out of Gaza and in Amman, or I went out and evacuated, Gaza never leaves your mind at any time. So Gaza is the center of your conversations. Gaza is exactly where your mind escapes to if you ever wander or just wander off on your mind or gaze into nowhere. Gaza is there. The news channel is always open on our TV. We do not go to NBC or movies or entertainment or comedy. It's always on the news. We're waiting and hearing, receiving updates. I open my phone and all I do is go to my friends, message them each one by one, make sure that they're okay. I go and check the news outlets and channels all over social media. I go to social media and I see the stories and posts of people, and I post about Gaza. So Gaza is everywhere, and Gaza is always the center of the entire purpose and being in me and my life. Gaza will always be there, and it's not something that I can just move past from. And I still strive to get back to Gaza after this is all over and the chance allows it. And at the same time, in Amman, many of the companies, people, brands, they show solidarity with Gaza. So you can see Gaza and the Palestinian flag, and many of the heroes have been reporting on the ground from Gaza everywhere around you. You'd have those two types of people in your life. So there's the type of people who made the decision that once the chance allows it and everything is over, they want to leave Gaza. And you can never blame them for that, because they've endured so much and enough that they want to find somewhat of a safety, because the world let them down and they won't let them live where they belong in safety. But there's also the other type of people who still want to still be in Gaza after everything is over. And those two people, you cannot blame. Each and every one are entitled to their own decisions after enduring so much. And at the same time, let this be clear. Do not paint Gazans as people who are built to endure all of this, who are built to just be called heroes. Oh, look at Gazans, look at people. For example, the great journalist al-Dahdouh, people just want to always paint him as someone as just a hero that endured so much. Look at him, he's still there, he's still reporting. What he endured is unacceptable. What he endured is deliberate attempts at murder. What Gazans have endured ever since, and people in Palestinians have been enduring ever since 1948 up until now. We're not just built and wanting your chance of us being the heroes and being the people you look up to. We want to live a normal life. We want to be able to do the simple things in life that you do each and every day, and just live that simple life. So when we say Gaza and sea and home, so the first one is Gaza and the third one is home, and they both, to me, mean the same thing. Gaza is home. Gaza is the place that I love and I'm so used to, and I choose to be in. I choose to enjoy the simplicity of being a person who lives in Gaza and who sees Gaza as the biggest, most modern, beautiful city in the world. It does not have to have the shining lights, the big towers, the malls, the brands, the planes flying all over it, the celebrations all over Gaza, by the simplicity of literally connecting all of this, these two words, Gaza and home, to the second word, which is sea, that made Gaza so special. It was going to the sea, the calm place, the place where you can escape from so much that's going on in your life and just feel like you're at a place of serenity, you're at a place of calmness, you're at a place of peace and tranquility. And seeing all of this, Gaza is my home, and I'm someone who's lucky enough to be meters away, like where I live in Gaza city, I'm meters away from the sea, and that means the world to me, and I'm lucky enough. And all of this will always be circulating around me. So do never think that by everything that's happening, I'm gonna turn the page on Gaza and forget what Gaza is. Gaza is my life, and it's been circulating ever since I opened my eyes, and ever since the farthest memory I remember from my childhood to now, it all circulates around one thing in common, which is Gaza. Gaza really needs you. We've been trying to give you so many educational lessons about Gaza and the history of Palestine. You have to do your research and to know more about us and our struggle for liberation and our struggle to stay on our land and the resistance we have been doing. You have to educate yourself on how to help the people of Gaza and Gazans. We have given you so many ways. We have told you to voice your calls for a ceasefire and a free Palestine all over social media. We still need you to continuously do that. This is not a trend where you can do it for a week and then stop it. You need to do it each and every day, and especially also after all of this is done, to continue your calls for a free Palestine and for the Palestinians' rights. We've given you the lesson of boycott and how effective it is to boycott. The idea of boycott, people, is very effective. I'm not sure how tough it is for you to change your cup of coffee from a company that funds genocide to another company that doesn't do that. How tough could it be when every time you do that, just remember that there's a child who's literally targeted and who's killed. They tell you that there's a statistic that says that around 10 children daily lose a part of their body. So when you just think about that, just think about how effective could you be to just not shop from here, but from another place. You have so many alternatives. We're not telling you to quit some kind of oxygen. We're telling you that there's a cup of coffee, get another one from another company that doesn't fund genocide. This piece of clothing that you like, you will find thousands others from a company that doesn't fund genocide. Your effective boycott, why do we do that? We do that because boycott hurts the people who fund genocide, who put themselves complicit to this genocide. And at the same time, you're protesting, and that's amazing. But at the same time, think about the idea that your voice is heard and you're impactful. No matter how many days this goes on, keep doing it, because we need you. Because as soon as you turn a page and decide to start ignoring Gaza, at the same time, those are the times where killing becomes normal and our life becomes worthless. So be there for us.